Hello, Wheat Ridge Evangelical Lutheran Church, or at least those who are viewing the Leviticus Bible study from Wheat Ridge Evangelical Lutheran Church. Or, I guess we also have people who may just visit our website or our Facebook page and see these. Maybe, probably not, but that's okay. Okay, it's been a bit. There was an announcement I think made that we're going to try and do these every other week. I would like to be able to get them every week. I'll try and get them out as often as I could. Certainly every other week we'll do these online things because I know that a lot of people still aren't comfortable or able to get to Bible studies in person. The fall and the winter are coming up. Coronavirus cases are going up, whatever that does mean, but I know that does cause concerns for some people. And honestly, it should, so that's okay. So that may mean that these Bible studies are even more important in the next couple of months. So we'll keep them going. So we're at Leviticus Chapter 19. I'm going to read through it like I usually do, but we're probably going to have one, maybe two, well, certainly at least two, maybe three different studies on this one alone, because there's a lot of stuff, and they seem to it kind of seems to be all over the place. So, Leviticus 19. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to all the congregation of the people of Israel, and say to them, You shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy. Every one of you shall revere his mother and his father, and you shall keep my Sabbaths. I am the Lord your God. Do not turn to idols, or make for yourselves any gods of cast metal. I am the Lord your God. When you offer a sacrifice, a pleasing offering to the Lord, you shall offer it so that you may be accepted. It shall be eaten the same day you offer it, or on the day after, and anything left over until the third day shall be burned up with fire. If it is eaten at all on the third day, it is tainted, it will not be accepted, and everyone who eats it shall bear his iniquity, because he has profaned what is holy to the Lord, and that person shall be cut off from his people. Verse 9, When you reap the harvest of your land, that's not supposed to happen. Sorry, guys. When you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not reap your field right up to its edge, neither shall you gather the gleanings after your harvest. And you shall not strip your vineyard bare, neither shall you gather the fallen grapes of your vineyard. You shall leave them for the poor and for the sojourner. I am the Lord your God. Excuse me just a second. This is an important text that I got to send out. Yep. That's all you needed. Okay. Verse 11. You shall not steal. You shall not deal falsely. You shall not lie to one another. You shall not swear by my name falsely, and so profane the name of the Lord your God. I am the Lord. You shall not oppress your neighbor or rob him. The wages of a hired servant shall not remain with you all night until the morning. You shall not curse the deaf or put a stumbling block before the blind, but you shall fear your God. I am the Lord. You shall do no injustice in court. You shall not be partial to the poor or defer to the great, but in righteousness you shall judge your neighbor. You shall not go around as a slanderer among your people, and you shall not stand up against the life of your neighbor. I am the Lord. You shall not hate your brother in your heart. You shall reason frankly with your neighbor, lest you incur sin because of him. You shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against the sons of your own people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord. You shall keep my statutes. You shall not let your cattle breed with a different kind. You shall not sow your field with two kinds of seed. You shall not wear a garment of cloth made of two kinds of material. As a man lies sexually with a woman who is a slave, if a man lies sexually with a woman who is a slave, assigned to another man, and not yet ransomed or given her freedom, a distinction shall be made. They shall not be put to death, because she was not free. But he shall bring his compensation to the Lord, to the entrance of the tent of meeting, a ram for a guilt offering, and the priest shall make atonement for him with the ram of the guilt offering before the Lord for his sin that he committed. And he shall be forgiven for the sin that he has committed. When you come into the land and plant any kind of tree for food, then you shall regard its fruit as forbidden. 3 years it shall be forbidden to you. It must not be eaten. And in the 4th year, all its fruit shall be holy. an offering of praise to the Lord. But in the 5th year you may eat of its fruit, to increase its yield for you. I am the Lord your God. Verse 26, almost done, guys. You shall not eat any flesh with the blood in it. You shall not interpret omens or tell fortunes. You shall not round off the hair of your temples or mar the edges of your beard. You shall not make any cuts on your body for the dead or tattoo yourselves. I am the Lord. Do not profane your daughter by making her a prostitute, lest the land fall into prostitution and the land become full of depravity. You shall keep my Sabbaths and reverence my sanctuary. I am the Lord. Do not turn to mediums or necromancers. Do not seek them out, and so make yourselves unclean by them. I am the Lord your God. You shall stand up before the gray head and honor the face of an old man. You shall fear your God. I am the Lord. When a stranger sojourns with you in your land, you shall not do him wrong. You shall treat the stranger who sojourns with you as the native among you, and you shall love him as yourself. For you were strangers in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. You shall do no wrong in judgment, in measures of length or weight or quantity. You shall have just balances, just weights, a just ephah, and a just hin. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. And you shall observe all my statutes and all my rules, and do them. I am the Lord. Okay, lots of stuff happened there. Lots and lots and lots of stuff, right? And it kind of seemed like a big jumbled mess. Like, what in the world? We're talking about prostitution, and then we're talking about 2 different types of garment, like cloth and polyester. They didn't have polyester, but you know what I mean. And then we're talking about horticulture and agriculture. And we're talking about what you're supposed to do when a sojourner comes into your land. Just tons of different stuff, and none of it seems cohesive. Why? That's kind of crazy. And at first sight, like I said, it seems weird. It seems just completely jumbled. It seems haphazardly assembled. Just a bunch of ritual laws and moral laws and religious laws and all of this kind of stuff just thrown together. But actually, it is more organized than you would think at first glance. Okay? And the formula that takes place, you've got to see it first and foremost seen in this divine self-introduction, right? So God is continuously saying his name over and over and over again, right? I am the Lord. I am the Lord your God. All of these things he continuously says, right? But it seems as if those self-identifications are placed in specific places. So it might actually block off some subunits or major units, right? So when you take a look at all of those, the shorter version, the one that says, I am the Lord, that seems to maybe block off a bunch of subunits, right? We see that in verse 12 and verse 14, 16, 18, 28, 30, 32, 37, that I am the Lord, right? And then, so everything in between those subsections, you can kind of see, oh, yeah, maybe all of this kind of does fit together in this subsection. And then in the greater major units, the major sections, you get the fuller, I am the Lord your God, right? That happens verse 3, verse 4, 10, 25, 31, 34, 36. I think that's it. But in all of those sections, you might be able to see, okay, everything in between these sections might be a bigger section, right? And they all have something to do with each other in these bigger sections. So between verses 34 and 36, and between verses 31 and 34, that sort of understanding. Make sense? No? That's fine. Doesn't make all that much sense to me. But there's also some other connections that we can see, right? You must keep, right? Or you shall keep. We see this happening over and over and over again, right? You must do these things. You shall keep. And it, well, not over and over. I think it divides it. We only hear like 3 different times, right? Verse 2. We have to speak to the whole congregation of the people of Israel. Say to them, you shall be. Right? You shall be holy. Verse 19, we have the same thing. You shall keep my statutes. And then verse 36 and, right? Yeah, 36, 37. You shall, these things, right? So since we have something at the very beginning and something at the middle and something at the very end, we can also probably see that there's two main sections that are happening, right? Between the first and the middle of the you shall, and between the middle and the end of the you shall. And both of those, they kind of parallel each other. So you'll see that we have certain things like in verses 5 through 10 that are kind of connected to verses 20 through 25. Okay, everything kind of has something to do with sacrifices and agriculture. So those are there, right? Then 11 through 18 is kind of a moral rules that are laid down. That's connected to verses 26 through 32, and we've got religious and ethical and moral things going on there as well, right? And then we see bookends again, verses 3 and 4. This is what you as Israelites are going to do. And then verses 33 to 36, this is what the resident aliens, this is what the sojourners are going to do too. One and the same, kind of bookends it, right? So the Israelites, this is who you are, this is what you'll do. If you've got people who are living with you who aren't Israelites, but they're sojourning with you and they're resident aliens, they're going to do the same exact sort of thing. This is for everybody. Okay, so kind of bookends everything. All right. So God is using Moses as he usually does, but sometimes he talks to Aaron too, right? Or Aaron and Moses. But here, verse 1, he's talking to Moses. And he says, address the congregation. This is, I believe, the only second time. And maybe he only does it 2 times where he tells Moses to address the congregation directly, not address the congregation through Aaron or whatever the case may be, but address the congregation. So again, this is Yahweh speaking to the entire people, all of Israel, the entire congregation, the people, the church, right? This is Yahweh speaking to them as a community, and he's addressing them as a community, right? And through all of this, you'll see this. He's using the second person, right? You shall. He's using second person plural and second person singular. You. But when we hear that you in the plural, we do hear it, oh, he's not just talking to Moses, he's talking to the whole congregation. You shall do this. This is what you are. This is who you are. All of these things. So pronouns are important. I know as grade school kids, we don't think they're all that important. We kind of skip over grammar because it's boring. Grammar's important. It tells us a lot. So you shall do this, right? And Yahweh is addressed. Oh, and remember this too. And this is important because we're going to see this come into play in the first couple verses. But every time, we've talked about this before, but every time in the Old Testament specifically, that, and I think in the New Testament probably too, but not as often. But anytime you see smaller capital L-O-R-D, Lord, that's Yahweh, right? That's God giving his divine name. So in all of these sections that we talked about earlier, right? I am the Lord your God. It's in the Hebrew, it's I am Yahweh. I am Yahweh your God. Kind of has it's the personal name that God is giving there, right? Has a deeper meaning. So he's setting these Israelites up as a community, right? As an ethnic community, the Israelites, right? Families led by parents, right? Getting their divine authority from God himself. But it's parents and then children, so that's families, and then clans, and then tribes, and then the whole nation sort of thing, right? It all disseminates out from this family unit, right? So, and this is what the Israelites do. They're concerned with their family, but they're concerned with their neighbor. They're concerned, or going to be concerned, with crops and agriculture, and with the rich and the poor, and with all of these people. This is what a society will do. And this is what you'll do when you enter into the promised land, right? Because remember, this is Yahweh speaking about a future event, right? This is what you're going to do in the promised land, because there's Not much growing to be done while you're wandering around in the desert. And remember, this is being given at Mount Sinai, so the expectation is that they leave from Mount Sinai and go directly to the Promised Land. But we all know the story. They leave Mount Sinai, they go to the Promised Land, they get there and they say, oh no, there's too many people and they're so big and strong, there's no way that we could get into this Promised Land and conquer these people. And God says, well, fine, you get what you wanted. None of you will be able to do it. And then they have to wander for 40 years until everybody dies who left Egypt, right? And then their offspring are able to go in there, apart from Joshua and Caleb. Okay, but more than just an ethnic community of Israelites, God is setting this nation up as a liturgical community, right? It's a liturgical one. Their main sense of connection here is liturgical, not ethnic. And this is in the New Testament. We have issues with this, and Jesus tries to speak to the Pharisees and to the Jews about this because they think that their purpose and who they are is all an ethnic thing, right? I can tie my lineage back to Abraham, and Yahweh's saying, it's not. That's not the point. That's not what's going on here. We're talking something liturgical, right? Everything is centered around Yahweh, right? So it's not about cultural rituals or social or political connections or structures or norms or connections that they can be made. It's all about the common worship of Yahweh. That's actually what makes the unity there. The common worship of Yahweh. Everything is centered around Yahweh. Yahweh's tabernacle, later on it's going to be his temple, obviously. All of this, right? His sacrifices, his statutes, it's all centered around Yahweh. Okay. We see, maybe you picked this up, maybe you didn't, but it's kind of neat that we hear a lot of the Ten Commandments, right? In all of these extended smaller commandments, if you will. So sometimes we hear them really explicitly, and sometimes they're kind of woven in there, but they're there nonetheless, right? So I'm sure you picked some of these up, right? The first commandment, thou shalt have no other gods, right? Leviticus 19:4, right? We have that in this section here. Second commandment, we hear it in verse 12, right? Don't misuse the name of the Lord, right? Third commandment, remember the Sabbath day. We hear it in verse 3 and in verse 20. Fourth commandment, honor your father and mother. We hear it in verse 3 again and in verse 32. Fifth commandment, thou shalt not murder. We hear it in verse 16 and 17. Sixth commandment, don't commit adultery. Hear it in verse 29. Seventh commandment, thou shalt not steal. Verse 11, verses 35 through 36. Eighth commandment, thou shalt not bear false testimony, right? Thou shalt not lie about your neighbor. Verses 14 through 16. The ninth and 10th commandment, the covenant, we hear that in verses 17 through 18 and verses 33 through 36. It's all there, right? The 10 commandments. So the 10 commandments is the basic structure of all of Yahweh's commands, and yet he expands upon those as well and puts them into specific situations too. All right, we spoke about how this is given at Sinai, but it's intended for, it's intended for their whole life. But again, it's intended for this assumption that they're going to go straight into the Promised Land and take it. All right. Now we're going to talk about some of the specific verses, and this is why it's going to take so long, because we're going to work through like 4 verses today, because we've already had this set up here. And then there's a bunch of other verses that we got to kind of make bigger connections to and talk blah, blah, blah. So that'll be next time. Okay. Verses 1 through 2, we've got a call to holiness. It's been a long time since we read this, or 18 minutes ago, so I'm going to read it for you, verses 1 through 2. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to all the congregation of the people of Israel, and say to them, you shall be holy, for I, the Lord, your God, am holy. You shall be holy because I, the Lord your God, am holy. Because I, Yahweh, your God, am holy. Right? Is this law or is this gospel? Do we hear this as law or do we hear this as gospel? Is it a demand or is it a promise? Yes. I think we need to say it as yes. It's a command and it's a statement of fact. It's a promise, right? You must be this. You are this, right? It's a law because it's a requirement, but it's gospel also because it's a requirement that must be given from the outside, right? We can't be perfect. There's no way that we can be perfect, right? So it has to be given to us. Or there's no way that we can intrinsically be holy, right? The gospel is that which God gives this holiness to us, okay? God declares that He is their God, right? Yahweh says, I'm your God. And then He continuously reminds them of this throughout Leviticus chapter 19, right? We kind of went through them 20 different times. I am Yahweh, I am Yahweh, I am Yahweh your God, I am Yahweh, I am Yahweh your God, right? Over and over and over again, we say this, right? So He's continuously telling the people all of these statutes and then granting them access to Himself through His divine name. Granting them access to His holiness, right? Through His divine name. I am Yahweh, I'm your God. Yeah. And again, that's not just this law weighing over us, right? Kind of like a parent would do to their kid, right? You will do your homework. Why? Because I'm your dad and I said so. It's more than that, right? There is this gospel message of this is who Yahweh is making you to be. And the reason that we can say that is because in the Hebrew, in the imperfect, remember I said grammar is important. In the imperfect verb that is being used here, that's translated in this continual, or not continual, but in this promise, right? You shall be, you will be holy. You shall be, you will be, can be heard as a statement of fact. Right? But it's more than that. It can be heard as more than just a statement of fact as well, because, like I said, it can be you will be holy as a promise, you are holy as a statement of fact, and you shall be holy as a demand. Right? So we got three different ways that we can hear this, and there isn't a right or wrong way to hear this. There is the yes, I will be holy. That's a promise. I am holy. That's a statement of fact. And I shall be holy. You shall do these things. Okay, good. So it's both and or all and of these, right? And again, now we see that Israel's holiness derives from Yahweh's holiness. All of those commands, all of the following commands that we get, presuppose that God makes these people holy. He makes them and He keeps them holy. They receive God's holiness. And then, so what all these things are is they are called to refrain from anything that actually blocks God's holiness, that actually puts something in between the holiness that Yahweh is giving to them, right? That's what all of these commands do. So if they transgress these commands, it's the action is actually blocking this, right? Saying, no, I would rather be this. I don't want that. I don't want these gifts from you, okay? So in that way, God is not calling, God's not giving all of these commands as a formula that they keep in order that they may become holy, that the Israelites can generate this holiness of themselves. And this is something that extrapolates out for us as Christians as well. We don't see God's law as something that is given to us so that we can create our own holiness or perpetuate or show God how holy we are. That's not the purpose of this, right? That's self-sanctification, holiness language, to be made holy, but also self-justification, made righteous, right? That I'm doing this myself. But that's not the theology of Leviticus. That's not the theology of the New Testament either, right? Because in Leviticus, we hear all about purification and sanctification, but we hear about all these things. And in the New Testament, those terms have kind of morphed into justification. But it's all by grace. It's all by God's work, right? It's all that Yahweh is doing this. I'm setting up the tabernacle in a sacrificial system. Oh, Yahweh, how do you want me to sacrifice? Can I go get a goat and do it however I want to? Or go get a bear? Or no. I'm going to tell you how to do it. I'm going to lay out my sacrificial system and you're going to do it appropriately. Why? Because this is what I'm setting up for you to do so that you might receive my good and gracious gifts. It's all Yahweh doing all of these things, right? So all of this is, these laws are about the reception of God's holiness, not the creation of it, right? And I know that might sound like semantics, that we're kind of playing around with it, but it's very important. It's very different. There is a difference between passive righteousness and active righteousness. Am I righteous before God because of the active things that I have done? Or am I righteous passively before God because of what Christ has done for me, what God has done for me? We got to hear it in those ways. Okay. We're coming up to 25 minutes, so now we're going to kind of get through verse 3 and 4 real quick here. Verse 3 and 4 speak about, every one of you shall revere his mother and his father, and you shall keep my Sabbaths. I am the Lord your God. I am Yahweh your God, right? Do not turn to idols or make for themselves any gods cast of metal. I am the Lord your God. All right, so now we've got the fourth commandment, right? Honor your father and mother. Why do you do this? Because by honoring and respecting your parents, one showed that they had the correct understanding that the parents were God's representatives here on earth in time and space in a fleshly sort of way, right? So in honoring the parents, they're honoring God. So in keeping the fourth commandment, you're keeping the first commandment. Okay. Parents were also the children's connection to the nation of Israel as a whole, as a community of believers, because it was the parents' responsibility to lead the children in these statutes of God, and more importantly, to allow these children to have this continued access to the tabernacle through these sacrifices and through the understanding of the Sabbath day, right? And the proper rest of the Sabbath day. Because in keeping the Sabbath, in refraining from work, listen here, this is an important thing. In refraining from work, that was an acknowledgement that holiness can't be attained by works, right? You had to receive it passively. So this, remember the Sabbath day, by keeping it holy, you shall not work, you shall not blah, 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 blah. This forced the Israelites to sit there and realize that there wasn't a single thing that they could do with the works of their hands that could establish salvation for them, that could make anything holy. They have to sit there and do nothing and let holiness come to them. That's how it is with us too, right? Sabbath day. And maybe not as a requirement, but maybe so that we might be able to understand this better as well. We as family units should probably take this Sabbath rest in a very practical way, maybe a little bit more. We should view it a little bit more importantly. I don't know. I know I probably should. Anyways, okay, they shall not turn to any other gods. We get that, of course, first commandment stuff, right? Idols. Is that what it says in the ESV? Do not turn to idols. It's funny. That's not the word in the Hebrew. In the Hebrew, I guess the best translation that the commentary that I looked this up on says is godlings, right? Little teeny gods, or it's this derogatory term for idols being puny and weak and pointless and no deity whatsoever, right? So it's like, yeah, look at that puny little god over there, right? Then that nothing idol that you have. Don't turn to that nothing idol over there. It's pointless, it's puny, it's weak, it's nothing, right? Have no other gods. Yahweh is your God, right? And then we have this, don't make any metal images as well, which oddly enough, they're going to do, right? As Moses comes down from Mount Sinai and he sees the golden calf, right? As Aaron and all of Israel said, oh, let's worship Yahweh this way. And Yahweh says, you dummies, don't worship me this way. Don't worship me how you think I need to be worshipped. I'm establishing worship, and that's how you're going to worship me. If you worship me this way, how you want to, how you think it's appropriate, you're not worshiping me. You're worshiping a false godling, right? A stupid little idol. Don't do it. Don't do it at all. All right. So why do we have crucifixes and paintings and these little things in our congregation, in our homes. Why doesn't this don't have metal images? Because the appropriate way to view it is that these things, these sacred pieces of art, we don't believe that they grant us access to God. We're not worshiping God through these paintings, through these crucifixes. Instead, these are beautiful works of art that allow us to contemplate our Lord, and then go to the places where God is actually for us, His Word, His sacraments. So the proper uses of these, and we see this happen in the 8th century in the church. It's called iconoclasm, icons, right? The iconoclastic controversy. We also see this a little bit in the Reformation too, where you had reformers alongside Martin Luther, even a pastor that was with him at Wittenberg, Karlstadt, who said Luther wasn't going far enough. And they were running around, breaking into churches and destroying all of the icons, right? Setting to fire all of these paintings and pictures and crucifixes because they thought that was breaking the first commandment. When it wasn't. The people weren't trying to use it as a conduit to worship God. It was let me reflect on this beautiful piece of artwork so that I can better understand who my Lord is, and I can go to His Word and I can hear it, right? Okay, I think that's enough. 31 minutes, too long. So, all right, until next time.